Well, so what strikes me is that what everybody is trying to do is to build the kingdom of heaven upon earth, or to build the heavenly Jerusalem. Like I'm saying this in this very symbolic way. It's like that's what the American project is trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
is to build the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
And like it might not say that consciously, but that is the goal. And like everybody who wants to try to figure out how to fix America, that really is the best way of saying what they're trying to do is like how can we build Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it works. Like that's not what John saw in his vision. He didn't see the church and the saints rising up and building the New Jerusalem. He saw the New Jerusalem descending from heaven upon the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a very different idea.
Yeah. Well, sadly, Aaron is not with us today.
Ooh.
We haven't posted videos in a while, and we're just kind of getting started back up again, partly because he's recently married and then moving houses, and it's my schedule's been kind of busy too, so I don't want to blame it all on Aaron.
Mine too. So.
Oh, really? I thought you were been sitting around doing nothing.
Definitely not.
But so it's been difficult for us to get together, and we made plans today, and then he had some other emergency situation come up that he had to deal with. So no Aaron, and whenever we record without Aaron, or if David does something solo without Aaron, then we try to do like a topic that he'll just really hate, and then he'll think, am I really a part of this? So that's what we're going to do today. So, are you just admiring yourself in the camera?
No, I'm just looking.
Okay, so today we'll talk about monarchy. And David proposed this theory to me that what we need in America is a king.
Well, hold on a minute. You've been telling me this for years.
and I said, David, where on earth did you ever get such a stupid idea like that? And he said, I got it from you. Okay, that I'm not actually accurately reporting the conversation, but it was something like that. That was the gist of it. So I guess I'll just start off with, what in the world are you thinking?
Democracy stinks.
Stinks?
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of un-American of you to say.
Yeah, who cares?
And we are American.
Wait.
And America, I would submit, does have some good things going for it. So there.
It's an interesting counterpoint that you make there. I guess the question, like, it goes back to, we have this ongoing collapse of our cultural narrative, our cultural story, all of the things that we've kind of taken for granted for at least the last 80 years, ever since World War II, have like kind of fallen in on themselves, and now you have like all these wild ideas coming out. And I think part of that is just the questioning, like maybe I'm just part of the wild idea crowd, but there's just like this questioning of are all of the things that we've been taught concerning, like, for one thing, the nature of man and power and authority, and like the theories of governance that we've been pushed to believe, like, are these things actually true? And I think a big thing that broke people's like love of democracy was the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, where it's like we go forward fighting, like, at this point I feel like it's pretty not controversial to say fighting wars that we had no business fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I think basically nobody supports.
Well, you have part of what we're doing it in the Middle East is trying to impose democracy on people who don't want it.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're fighting these wars that we have no business fighting, and the objective of these wars seems to be imposing a world order that the people aren't interested in.
Yeah.
And then we like criticize them and make fun of them and act like they're terrible people because the fallout of our stupid idea was their countries becoming worse than they were before we got there.
Right.
and like Afghanistan, like returning to the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, let's think about this for a minute. Like, for the Afghani people, like the Taliban is a better alternative than the democratic government that we put in.
Yeah.
Um,
It seems weird to say that you would impose democracy on people that don't want it, because democracy would be about the will of the people. Um, and so it might even seem like if you would say the people don't want democracy, then you would say like, oh well, so they were being democratic about deciding that they don't want to be democratic. Is that what's going on here?
yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is like that's actually kind of the same claim that communism makes. It's like this is all about the people,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you're oppressing the people and like preventing the people from rising up and overthrowing communism, it's like, is this really about the people?
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. Like that's a complicated question.
Okay. Now I'll
I,
just
I,
say.
I think what I would say is like you're failing to take a lot of things into account when you have that examination of the problem. It's like maybe it's not actually the will of the people. Maybe it's the like the forces of reality exerting itself and like pushing back against what is really an unnatural and artificial way of doing things.
Yeah.
And which I think is like the point that I actually am wanting to make is that this like enlightenment system that America creates is an unnatural position. And for that reason, like it's always going to like dissolve. It's going to come apart.
Okay. So I will come back around. You said this enlightenment system is unnatural. And I want to repeat that just because I want to hold on to it and I want to wander away for just a second. When it comes to like America having a king, whatever, like I don't see this as being like, how are you going to do that? I mean, there's no existing monarchy. Like, how are you going to establish someone who would have the divine right of being a king in a nation that has no kings? So there seems to be like something kind of unrealistic in even like having the conversation to begin with. So I'm not really going to advocate for America should have a king, but I think it's worth considering like what does monarchy mean and what does democracy mean, and I think there are ways that can actually be relevant to people's lives and how we approach reality. Just to use the term that you threw out there. I will say, like again, even though I don't think there's any realistic possibility of any kind of monarchy in the United States, which is founded on the principle that monarchy is evil. And yeah, I feel like there's something.
Well,
whenever I hear of anybody in Europe that has a return to the monarchy kind of mentality, there is something inside of me that says yes. And when I say something inside of me, I'm not saying like a reasonable, thought out position or something like that. But yet there's like something within me that rejoices and says like this would be an improvement. And it's if I tried to explain why, I think that would be almost like missing the point, because it's like it's a reaction that doesn't have a reason why. But it seems like, well, I heard somebody or read something of somebody in France that had this kind of return to the monarchy sort of position, who said that everything that we like about France was built or originated in a time when we had a monarchy, and everything that we've produced in the age of democracy has been like garbage that people don't like and they want it to go away. That's made the place less wonderful to be in. When people come as tourists to visit France, they come to visit the things that were built under a monarchy and not the things that were built under democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is true of every place in Europe.
I mean, maybe the Eiffel Tower is an exception.
Well, sort of. I mean, the Eiffel Tower has a kind of a mixed reputation, although it does draw a lot of tourists. You know, people talk about how, oh, at the time this was built, people actually thought it was ugly. And in fact, there are still lots of people who dislike the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, right.
And there aren't people who dislike Notre Dame Cathedral.
Right.
And I,
well, they aren't reasonable people.
yeah, I mean, there's people who might say like this stands for something that I don't stand for or whatever. But like if you look at this as a building,
Yeah.
then you like it.
Right.
I don't know how else to say that.
I think what I would say is that we just had our conversation. We just got done recording it as we're sitting here recording this about why am I Orthodox and not Catholic? And one thing I really talked about there at the end, was this contrast between the hierarchy of the Orthodox Church and the hierarchy of Roman Catholicism, where Roman Catholicism kind of interrupts the hierarchical structure through the institution of the Bishop of Rome. And I mean, I think I could extend that to say, I'm not sure I would advocate for the idea of a Christian empire, like some people want, either like some Orthodox people have a dream of we should restore the Roman Empire. We should retake Constantinople and have a Christian emperor again, or we need to reform the Russian Empire, the Third Rome, and have the czars as the Christian emperors again. And I think the ideal structure of the world is actually similar to the structure of the church, which is I'll borrow Richard Rowland's examination of Beowulf, and Beowulf has not a king, even though functionally he was the king, but he never called himself the king. And him being the example of a good king. And one of the reasons is because he never considered himself the king. He considered himself the vassal of Christ. And that's really, I think, when I say America should be a monarchy, if America is a monarchy, the king of America is Christ. And in Christ's kingdom, we have a hierarchy. We don't have a democracy. And what that means is there are people how things are ordered properly. What I would see happening is there are people who administer Christ's kingdom in his name. The bishops do that in the church, which is really Christ's kingdom. But the vicars, the magistrates, I should say, of the more political side of things, also should do such in Christ's name. And the reason I can say that is because Christ is the high priest, so he takes up the role of high priest, and that's why we don't have a high priest in Christianity, because Christ is the high priest. Christ is the priest of priests, the bishop of bishops. But he's also the king in the line of David. So it's I think if we're going to extend our Orthodox logic, that we don't have a pope or a high priest over all, or a bishop over all bishops, because Christ is the bishop over all bishops, then we also don't have a king over all kings, because Christ is the King of Kings. I'm laying out what I think the proper vision of the earth is.
Yeah, I think to kind of jump in here and say what we don't like about monarchy, what we don't like about a monarchy in America is this belief that one person shouldn't be the lord over me.
Right.
And I think actually, I think in the post Enlightenment world, monarchy is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would agree.
and the reason I would say monarchy is not good in the post Enlightenment world is because in the post Enlightenment world, the king is not answerable to God or to Christ. And instead, in the Enlightenment world, you have what is like in the highest place is the reason of man, and so the ultimate authority in the land is the king's will
Mm-hmm.
and the king's reason, and this is not a good system. If the king is bowing down before something higher than himself, then a monarchy, I think, actually is the ideal.
Yeah.
But again, like if you don't have that, then the monarchy, like it almost inevitably will be a kind of tyranny, because again, like the human reason and human will is what goes in the highest place,
Yeah.
and so you don't want to be pushed around by another human will.
Mm-hmm.
And so democracy is kind of an answer to that, where it's like instead of this one guy being in the highest place, what's in the highest place is the people and the will of the people, which you might argue is an improvement.
Yeah.
It's not an improvement to say that my will or our will should be higher than God. But it might be an improvement to say that my will or the will of the people should be higher than like one tyrannical ruler.
Yeah. Um, I think what happens in America, and then this idea spreads from America into the rest of the Western world, and then it's kind of like spreading to the rest of the world in general in more modern times, is our experience with kings in the early modern era is with bad kings. And the reason they're
Mm-hmm.
bad kings, so we talked in our previous video about sometimes the church has bad bishops and bad patriarchs. And what makes a bad bishop and a bad patriarch and what makes a bad king are always the same thing, which is that something in their connection to the next step up in the hierarchy is broken down.
Mm-hmm.
So bishops and patriarchs start acting according to their own ideas, their own priorities, instead of what is Christ.
Or as you were saying before, like they're acting in accordance with the will of a deranged emperor.
Yeah, right. And what makes that emperor deranged is the same thing. It's like, well, he's acting according to his own priorities, his own conclusions. You might even think he's acting like the iconoclast emperors, like seem to have thought that they were like defending the faith
Mm-hmm.
against a pagan incursion.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like you might not realize when your connection to the thing above you in the hierarchy is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And like this happens in Western Europe, that you have kings who are like ostensibly ruling in Christ's name, ruling in God's name, but are really ruling in their own name, or like for the glory of the empire,
Right. Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is wrong.
Yeah. In like you could say an ancient or medieval, or you could just say in a traditional conception of reality, the worst thing that you can do is to sever yourself from everything that is above you in the hierarchy,
Yeah.
so that you may be the top thing in your universe.
Yeah.
And and again, like in the post Enlightenment age, or just in any age where there's a bad king, then that's what has happened. The king has severed himself from whatever should properly be above.
Right.
Which I've said like answerable to God before, but you have like the saints and angels. You have these spiritual powers that should properly be above me as king.
Yeah.
And certainly to the Lord God. But if I cut myself off from that, then like that is the definition of evil.
Well, it's like Napoleon is a perfect example of that. Like at his coronation, he wanted to have himself crowned emperor, and so had I'm assuming like basically forced the Pope to come crown him as emperor,
Mm-hmm.
but deliberately did this to make a statement and insult the church. That instead of allowing the Pope to place the crown on his head and give him the scepter, he went down from the throne and took them,
Mm-hmm.
and then crowned himself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like
I mean, that is a like a perfect symbolic image of
yeah,
what.
well, like he knew what he
Yeah.
was doing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Like he was not an idiot.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to the position that he got to by being an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's what a bad king does, though, is crowns himself.
yeah, and so like he does it in a very visible way. And you know, like at the technical sense, good kings might still be crowned by the bishop or the pope, or whatever it might be. But in their hearts and in their minds, like they crown themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so like their glory is their own glory and not God's glory.
Yeah.
Which is like this. You do have this like that concept in the book of Revelation where it's like the saints are the ones who cast off their crowns, their glory at Christ's feet.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, people make a lot of interesting interpretations of this idea of like the saints casting their crowns at his feet. And like really what's going on there is they're casting off their glory so that Christ can crown them with glory. And you know, it's like same things. It's like we cast off our garments at his feet. Why? So that he can garb us in glory and incorruption. So it's the same thing for a king. It's like a king has to cast off his crown before Christ so that Christ can crown him with the crown of righteousness. And like a king who doesn't do that, like Napoleon, or like these corrupt early modern monarchs, are the ones that are not doing that. You know, so like this like sort of enlightened idealism comes in and convinces kings that they are superior people and they have the divine right to rule. And like this is this disease.
But it's a divine right that comes from their superiority.
Yeah, right. This is this disease that comes into the European idea of monarchy, which is like the reason we're kings is because we were divinely ordained by God to be kings. And it's like, yeah, but read the Bible. Like the Bible explains, yes, God made you king, but he can take it away whenever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like
and
what he did.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like that's a big point with the kings of Israel. It's like, hey, Hezekiah, God made you king, and now he's going to take it away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you know the American distaste toward monarchy or toward the very idea of a king. It seems to me, and this is kind of what you're articulating, is that our problem actually is not with monarchy. Our problem is with an Enlightenment vision of monarchy.
Yeah, our problem is actually with like the worst form of collapsed, corrupt monarchy. And there's like a faulty assumption there that it's like, oh, well, democracy is better because it can't become corrupt in this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, now here we are 250 years later.
The founders of America were quite cautious about democracy.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, I mean, that's sort of what they've given us. I mean, they tried to come up with different ways to safeguard the problems with well, I mean, we don't have pure democracy for one thing.
Yeah,
we,
well,
we
I'm not
also
using
have like all the checks and balances in the government and all this. So we're not using that narrow definition of democracy, right? Because we're saying we're considering this a democracy, but just to say, so our founding fathers were skeptical of democracy, and sort of what they were trying to do was create a democracy that didn't have the problems inherent with democracy.
Yeah.
And in that sense, like anybody in America should be able to criticize democracy and still be like faithful to the vision of the founding fathers. And whether this experiment was going to work or not, they weren't actually very confident.
Yeah, right.
You know, they knew dangers that come with democracy. And then you were saying like time has shown that things have kind of devolved, and we sort of had this concern that the way that democracy involves is that if it's the people, if the nation is directed by the will of the people, then the people can direct the nation towards self-serving ends.
Mm-hmm. But it is interesting because if you go like into medieval history, there were a lot of republics in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Like especially within the boundaries of the Holy Roman Empire, like Northern Italy included. Like
Mm-hmm.
Northern Italy for most of the Middle Ages, like the later Middle Ages, is controlled by the Holy Roman Empire. And so, like in southern Germany, obviously Switzerland is a comprised of republics that arose within the Holy Roman Empire. And then you have the republics of northern Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Was Venice a republic? I think it was, wasn't it?
I don't know. Could be.
Um, and but what's interesting is the late medieval republics very often become tyrannical states.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the city of Bern, for example, like by the late Middle Ages, is a tyrannical, expansive state.
Yeah.
And it's like its goal is to forge an empire. And like Rome is an example of that. It's like, Rome founds the Roman Republic. It gets rid of its kings. For similar reason that America gets rid of its kings. And like it doesn't take long at all, after it deals with its regional opponents that are like an existential threat to the republic, like it's not satisfied with that. It's just like increasingly expansionist,
Mm-hmm.
just like devouring everybody until like not long after.
Well, and people wage that as a complaint against America as well.
Yeah.
That America is an expansionist empire.
Yeah, it's like a Rome. Rome is like a curse in the mouth of everybody in the ancient world, because it's just like this monster that's just gobbling everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's why Carthage tried to stop them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. In America, like we're not typically expanding our political borders,
yeah,
although we did a lot of that at one time.
well,
But
it's like Tacitus puts this in the mouth of. Doesn't he put it in the mouth of Vercingetorix, or some other Gaulish king, talking about Rome as like you make a desolation and call it peace.
mm-hmm.
And it's like Tacitus's way of criticizing the Roman system without getting in trouble.
Yeah. Right.
It's like if I can put it in the mouth of Rome's enemies, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like it's just this strange thing that happened. The French Revolution goes in the same direction. It's like the French Revolution is awful. If you don't know anything about it, it's like it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just massacred everybody, including their own.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's probably like even worse than communist revolutions.
Yeah. Right.
And then like it doesn't take a long at all for it to collapse into Napoleon. And what's weird about Napoleon is Napoleon sees his mission as bringing democracy to the world.
Yeah.
It's like France is not a democracy; it's an empire. You're an absolute authoritarian.
Mm-hmm.
Like you completely supplanted the democracy of France, but now you see your mission is to go and overthrow all of the monarchies of the world and install French republics everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna go and just destroy the Holy Roman Empire because it's the ultimate representation of this old world order that I hate.
Yeah.
And it's just strange. It's like that's what democracy, like that's what seems to happen so often.
Mm-hmm.
Like in our modern world, is like it just becomes this tyrannical force. Like I mentioned already, the wars in the Middle East. It's like why do we think it's our job? Like why do we think that everything else is so evil that we have to go to people who don't want us and overthrow their governments? Because we decided that an authoritarian government is an evil that can't be allowed to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned with Napoleon, there's a kind of a contradiction in that very idea. There should be no authoritarian government, and so we should go in as an outside force and overthrow what exists and install the thing that we want to exist there. That's like the most authoritarian thing that you can do.
Even if the people that we're invading and installing our government actually already have our government, but they don't have our version of it.
Yeah, right.
Like that's what happened in Switzerland.
Yeah.
It's like they're already a republic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
I mean, but the fact is they were a corrupt republic. And the reason they were a corrupt republic is because they were a very old republic. Like the republics in Switzerland had been there for like 700 years.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like they were very old and so very institutionalized and corrupt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're saying the bad guys of history are not the monarchs, but the republics?
Well, I'm just saying the bad guys of history are everybody. Like the error in the American assumption, in the modern Western assumption, is that the Republican and representative form of government is somehow exempt from the problems of early modern monarchies.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not.
Right.
We see that clearly today, that we're running into all of the same problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like the problems Europeans are having are the same problems their predecessors had 200-300 years ago, which is that the government no longer represents them. The government no longer has their best interest in mind. Instead, it's the leader's agenda is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I've got to screw everybody in my country, or like bring in mass waves of foreigners to destroy the culture.
Yeah. Or you could say bring in mass waves of foreigners in order to exert my political will, which is not in line with the political will of the people.
Right. That's what I was saying.
So,
like you're destroying the culture so that you can exert your vision of utopia upon the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is what happens because republicanism actually is a utopianist system. But it's like a compromise. Like it's a utopianist system making a compromise with reality. Because it's like the reality is that the way our idealized version of the way the world works, that's not real. But we're going to try to get there anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so in part, we've said that the problem with monarchy is really a problem with an enlightened monarchy. Mm-hmm. We've said that,
but not necessarily. Like you can have the same problem in a medieval monarchy as well,
right?
Or like in the Byzantine Empire.
Although I think in a sense, like
it's just built into the system of the Enlightenment, because the system of the Enlightenment is a breakdown of the heavenly hierarchy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And bringing up you brought up the French Revolution. You have like this is I mean, this is a horrible thing, but it's like one of my favorite things that's ever happened in history. Like you talk about Napoleon crowning himself, as like there's a profound symbolism in this act right here, and that symbolism is the symbol of every leader in the modern world, you could say.
Yeah.
But also in the French Revolution, Robespierre takes the prostitute and dresses her up like the goddess of reason, so that she can be worshipped in the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And again,
that's kind of what I was thinking of when I said, you said everybody likes Notre Dame. And it's like,
yeah, right. No, I mean, but to me though, this is like like symbolically one of the most amazing things that's ever happened, because this is a statement of this is what we value in the modern world. We take God off of the throne and we worship reason, and like that's what the whole worldview is built on. And there was one person who was bold enough to like actually do it in reality, to reveal, to show everybody this is what we stand for, that's of course they're getting rid of their monarchy when they're doing that. But this is like what the monarchs had already done, is again like put reason in the highest place, and if you put reason in the highest place, you're putting one of your own mental faculties in the highest place. Okay, so you have like the Enlightenment monarch is a sort of a formula for corruption and evil and rejection of a proper hierarchy. And then you talked about how historical republics are quite problematic, and that the problems of historical republics seem also to apply to the United States of America. Okay, but we can shift to talking about American democracy a little bit. And I said that that the Enlightenment is what made monarchies inevitably bad. And I think you can say like, well, the um, once the Enlightenment spoiled monarchies, then it proposed a new ideal system,
Yeah.
and that ideal system was realized in the United States of America. So what we have, you could say it's a product of the Enlightenment. I think, in a sense, I think you could also say that the American utopian vision is like the fulfillment of the Protestant Reformation.
Yeah.
But for right now, we'll just say like, well, either one. It's the Protestant Reformation, or we could point of it as a political fulfillment of the Enlightenment. And then I'll just say like, well, what would be the matter? What would be the problem, or potential problem in American democracy?
I think I could ask it as something like, what is there in the American system to keep it in line with the divine principles,
Mm-hmm.
or keep it in subjection to the divine hierarchy?
Yeah.
So like, what possible force holds America, like in theory, because like obviously it hasn't happened in reality, but supposing it could happen or could have happened, what possible avenue is there for America to be held in subjection to Christ?
Mm-hmm.
Because like this is the thing that like evangelicals involving themselves in politics are like trying to always accomplish, is to bring America in subjection to Christ. But my question is, how are you actually going to do that? Like let's say you manage to get a bunch of Christian leaders elected and manage to pass a bunch of Christian policies. Like, what's going to hold it together? What's going to keep the nation from revolting against you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, what's even going to get you there in the first place? What's going to get the people to see that, okay, these leaders are not Christian? Like, look at like the current political system. Like, there's like huge meltdowns going on right now within the United States government,
Mm-hmm.
and people associated with it. It's like, at what point do you realize like nobody's the good guy? That everybody involved in ruling the world is evil. And do you have a belief system that allows you to believe that there's actually good people that could be doing it?
Yeah.
Like if you're a Calvinist, you don't. I think, but that's a little bit beside the point. But I think, if you're an enlightened idealist, yeah, you believe that such people could exist. But why wouldn't you just make that person your king?
Yeah. Right.
Like that's Frederick the Great's philosophy. It's like, I'm the the enlightened leader who should be in charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
And so I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is,
So
like,
we do have this problem in democracy, that like this sort of George Washington problem, where you can get the ideal leader in George Washington, but once the system is established, you can never have George Washington again.
yeah,
You will always have somebody who is like a psychopath. Like,
yeah,
you will always have somebody who's like this extreme egotist,
right,
and your system can never ever give you anybody except that type of person.
yeah.
So that does seem to be a flaw.
Yeah, and then like you as an individual are always like having to make the choice to, like, basically endorse an evil person.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm using the word evil a little bit generously there, but yeah, like that, like about what you're saying, like there's this huge problem. Like nobody that's a good person wants to be the president of the United States.
Yeah. Or they just don't want it as bad enough as the bad person.
They might want to be the mayor of their local town.
Yeah, right.
But that's as high as their ambitions go.
Yeah, right.
And because America does not have a hierarchical form of government, that doesn't work. If you have a hierarchical form of government, okay, so let's use church polity as an example of that. Like the best bishops don't want to be bishops, and the best candidates for bishop will never be bishop because they'll never accept the job. But nobody like launches a campaign like vote for Father Gregory for bishop 2026.
Right.
It's like that's not how it works. Instead, the other bishops choose from among the priests, or maybe it's the bishop. Like the other bishops choose from among the priests or from among the monastics, like the person who is most qualified to be the bishop, and they very often do not want the job. Like I said earlier. And then when it comes to like a metropolitan or patriarch, it's like the bishops choose from like ideally the best from among themselves. Yeah. To be this person. Like yes, politics exist in the church.
Right. But you can also see like the more political it becomes, the worse everything will be. Yeah. And that's very easy to see when it comes to church politics. And it's like, well, actually that's pretty easy to see in national politics as well. Yeah. But it's just so baked into the system that like you just kind of throw your hands up and give up. That's all we can do. There's no alternative.
And it's like the Holy Roman Empire in the Middle Ages operated by this interesting theory, which is that the emperor is not a hereditary position. Instead, the princes of the empire choose the best from among themselves to be the emperor. Which is like, that's a really fascinating idea. Like, most of the time it doesn't actually work that way. But to be fair, you have a lot of great emperors in the Middle Ages. Yeah. Like you have a lot of great men that rise up in that role. Like you have a lot of bad ones too. But I think this is what the founding fathers were trying to work towards, and it sort of got subverted in the late 19th century with the way that we changed like the way the Senate works. And to a large degree, it seems like the election of the president has been undermined, and become more of a popularity contest than it was ever intended to be. Yeah. And you actually do have this idea, like in a lot of European nations, like especially parliamentary systems, where the executive of the government is not like chosen by popular vote, but it's still like you're not exactly getting away from the problem, because you're still like choosing a psychopath from among psychopaths.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like in a democracy, if you get a bad leader, well, he's just going to be there for a few years, and then you can vote him out and put somebody new in. Yeah. But your alternatives are not an improvement. So,
right. Yeah. That's a nice theory, but the problem breaks down when it comes to who are the people that actually want to be politicians.
Yeah. Right.
They're usually not the people that should be.
Okay, so I want to come back in at connecting democracy to Enlightenment ideals, or like I say, maybe we can eventually get to some Reformation ideals, but it does seem to me like the most significant statement of principles comes early in the Declaration of Independence, where you get this: we hold these truths to be self-evident, and self-evident. I mean, I'm pausing right there. Self-evident is an indication already of Enlightenment values. Right.
Which also was not like what the author
No,
wanted.
Thomas Jefferson. I've seen a couple different versions of this, and he wrote lots of drafts of it.
Yeah.
The version I'm most familiar with says, "We hold these truths to be sacred and manifest."
Yeah.
And I've seen also like sacred and maybe apparent or something instead of manifest.
Yeah.
And if you consider what the truths are, then it actually is kind of obvious they are not self-evident.
Right.
And so self-evident is just a wrong word.
Well, but it leads to a problem that you have in the modern world. So this is a problem
It's a false belief that rationality can produce the universe. Like,
yes.
that rationality can produce values.
Yeah, but so you have this problem. This problem exists in sola scriptura Protestantism and in Americanism, which is that you think that the truth is self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that if you just look at the problem, you're going to see the truth, or if you just look at the
or
scripture,
you can logically derive.
yeah,
right.
Like you can logically derive from the reading of scripture what the truth is. It's like, no, you can't. The truth is divinely manifest.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And like it reveals itself to us like according to the will of God.
Yeah.
Not according to my will. Like like this is the problem with Mormonism, which is that if you pray and you're sincere in your prayer, then God will give you this divine revelation. It's like, no, that's not the way it works, because you are bending God to your will when you do that. And like that's really kind of the problem in our form of government, is we are trying to bend God to our will. Like, we wouldn't say it that way, but at this deep metaphysical level, that's what we're doing. Like we're trying to wrestle control. I mean, maybe this would be a better way to say it. It's like we're trying to wrestle control over our destinies and over our lives from God, and make it our own responsibility, like our own, like put ourselves in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And like instead of seeing the truth as something that is divinely revealed according to God's will, we see it as something that we can, like, if you can't see the truth, you must be an idiot.
Yeah, right.
Which is like the problem that you run into with people who really believe, like, I'm using the religious side because it's easy to illustrate it that way. Like, if you can't see my point of view, then you must just be a moron.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you must just be stupid because it's obvious. Like, read the Bible, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Or like we have the same thing in the political realm, is like both sides just think the other side are just idiots.
Yeah, right.
Or evil, or both.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, or it could be that just is not the way truth works.
Yeah.
Like, truth is not obvious. It's not self-evident.
Yeah. Yeah, self-evident is, I think is frankly like just a careless term to put in the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
And again, what it's doing is it's trying to say that this project emerges from pure logic and reason.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's false. And so, like, to say we hold these truths to be sacred and manifest sounds like more mystical and vague, but I think in fact it's much more technically accurate.
Yeah, right.
To say these truths are sacred, because all men are created equal. That is not self-evident.
Yeah.
All men are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is not self-evident.
It's like nobody ever figured that out for like all of human history.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so there's a problem there, and the problem betrays the fact that this is built on the Enlightenment virtues of rationality. And that's why we're using the word self-evident. So, okay, I don't think I've got a whole lot of comment to say about all men are created equal in terms of this conversation here. Although, I mean, there's a sense in which this is a Christian idea, that in Christ there's neither slave nor free. And so there is a type of equality, but there's also like Christianity manages to maintain that and still maintain a very strong belief and appreciation for hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that that when we say all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence, that we're trying to hold the equality of all people as being something that's in opposition to the hierarchy, which would be an Enlightenment view also. But I won't comment on that too much. So our basic unalienable rights, that, I mean, we do still have the language that comes from our Creator, but that's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And life, okay, great. This is like a huge, very important virtue for anybody. Like you cherish life, you do what makes life possible. Liberty is the second of those, and we can deal with liberty. I think there's some interesting things to discuss here. But the pursuit of happiness, this is like one of the foundational pillars of American democracy, is that everybody should be free to pursue happiness. So what I'm pursuing is like some kind of desire that emanates from myself, and this is what my democracy is devoted toward, is toward my happiness as an individual. And this individualism and individual desires and individual happiness, this is like all foundational to the United States of America and to our vision. It's an improper way of living. Individualism is an improper way of living. Because because outside of community, you could just say it by extension, outside of hierarchy, then you don't have the resources for your own individual happiness. Like being selfish is self-defeating. Being individualistic is defeating of your own hopes and aspirations as an individual. Okay, I don't know if you had something to add to that, because we can jump to liberty as the greatest of all American ideals.
I think we should move there, because I think that'll kind of move into a lot of different points. Like individualism is a big
liberty is the same topic. I mean, liberty is about my individual liberty, and it's not about the strength of my family, and it's not about the strength of my community. That's not what is entailed in the American idea of liberty.
I mean, but it's also like you're starting to frame the world with this idea that it just consists of a bunch of individuals who are trying to sort out how to not step on each other's toes. And like this is what your whole world becomes. And so it's like then your whole focus becomes on offending and being offended, and like what my rights are, what I need, you already kind of discussed this, but like what I need to be happy, what I need, like what the world owes to me.
Instead of seeing, talk about like hierarchy as being important, it's like the proper unenlightened vision of hierarchy is that when you're in a position of authority, your job is to nurture everyone that's beneath you, to help them to be the best that they can be, and your job is to serve whoever's above you.
But no matter where you are on the hierarchy, like your job is to, like, your existence is to, like, to serve everybody else that exists. Like your existence is for the good of the whole. Rather than the system existing to make you individually prosper.
And partly the reason I bring that up is because when you mention like our focus, when our focus is on liberty, then it's going to be on not offending other people, and it's going to be on what are my rights, and especially that my rights. Then I've got like Jordan Peterson kind of echoing in my head there, because he's real big on this idea that like we become obsessed with what are my rights and not what are my responsibilities. It's like, well, that's, if you're going to focus on liberty as being your chief virtue, then you have an individualistic value system. Then it's almost like, according to your own ideal, there is no such thing as responsibility.
I mean, and that's interesting, because like that sort of Americanism like makes its way into American Christianity, and it like causes all these issues.
Yeah.
It's like I already mentioned, like the personal revelation, like that exists in Christianity, like an evangelical, like post Second Great Awakening Christianity in America. There's like this individual ecstatic experience becomes like the focus of your religious life, um, and it's like I'm deeply critical of framing our questions, and we as Orthodox people like get caught in having the debate on these grounds, like that salvation is about my personal salvation and my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Um, and we look at things in terms of the individual, and it's like, well, the individual is part of it. Your personal salvation is important. Your personal relationship with Jesus Christ is important. But Christianity, like again, like I've said before, operates at the cosmic scale 1st and foremost. And your individual experience is only real in as much as it participates in the whole.
Yeah.
And so like that's central to like the Orthodox idea of worship. Like this is why we have the same liturgy like almost every Sunday of the year. This is why we say the same prayers over and over and over and over again. It's not because we don't have the ability to pray for ourselves or to think for ourselves, or because we don't like have any actual knowledge or experience of God. It's because real experience and knowledge of God is participating in something higher and greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And so your life is patterned according to the whole. And like this is the problem in the American system. It's like there's nothing in the American system greater than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
you don't participate.
Right.
Like the only reason you participate in the American system at all is for your own benefit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you talk about like this. Your individual experience is important, but it's part of something greater. And you can go back to this like political question of liberty. Your liberty as an individual is also very important. I mean, as a contrast to a tyrant who's dictating every move that you make in your life, that's not good. Like liberty is necessary and essential,
mm-hmm.
but it is a mistake to think that liberty is the highest good. And in America, liberty is the highest good. You would have liberty. Liberty is valuable in service of things that are still greater than liberty.
Well, so what strikes me is that what everybody is trying to do is to build the kingdom of heaven upon earth, or to build the heavenly Jerusalem. Like I'm saying this in this very symbolic way. It's like that's what the American project is trying to do, is to build the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
And like it might not say that consciously, but that is the goal. And like everybody who wants to try to figure out how to fix America, that really is the best way of saying what they're trying to do is like, how can we build Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it works. Like that's not what John saw in his vision. He didn't see the church and the saints rising up and building the New Jerusalem. He saw the New Jerusalem descending from heaven upon the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a very different idea.
Yeah.
And it's almost the opposite idea.
Right.
And so like you have like radical fringe elements of the Reformation in the 16th century that try to do that. They try to take this city and build Jerusalem, build the New Jerusalem. It's like, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build this utopian society, and this is the mistake that we keep making over and over again. Is we keep trying to build Jerusalem. It's like you can't do it.
Yeah.
And like there's this idea implicit in the prophetic vision, like culminating in the destruction of
this city comes down from God out of his heaven as a bride adorning, and like the beauty of the bride is also like something that is a gift of God.
Yeah.
This is let's see, in Ezekiel, the beauty of the bride of God is beauty that He has given to her, the beauty of the jewels that He's given to her.
Right.
And yeah, again, so like the city comes from above, the beauty of the city comes from above as well.
Yeah, and it's like, we're sitting here recording this on the eve of Pentecost, and like that's what happens on Pentecost, is the new temple is consecrated. And where did the new temple come from? It came down from heaven, and like and then the Holy Spirit comes down on the day of Pentecost. Like again, it comes down from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Like they on the day of Pentecost don't perform some great ritual in order to consecrate the church. Like they don't like set out and like we're going to build this great new temple and we're going to do like, I mean, so it's sort of the opposite of what the Pharisees were trying to do. The Pharisees were trying to reform Israel so that God would consecrate their temple, because he never had. That temple had never been consecrated by God.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what the Pharisees are trying to do. Like in a sense, you could say that the Pharisees are trying to rebuild Jerusalem, because the last time when they returned from the exile and they rebuilt the temple, and then when they tried to reconcentrate it after Antiochus desecrated it, like it didn't work. And so the Pharisees, this is what they're trying to do. Is like we've got to build the perfect Jerusalem. We've got to build the perfect Israel so that God will come down and bless us. And then when God comes down to bless them, it's not because of what they were doing. It's because this holiness comes down from above. It doesn't, like, it's not something we're going to build. And like everybody since the day of Pentecost who has been trying to create the heavenly kingdom has continued to make the same error. It's like, we're going to build the empire. We're going to build, this utopian state, or we're going to build this great American dream and then bring it out. It's like, we're trying to build Jerusalem. It's like, no, again, Jerusalem comes down from above.
And therefore America should have a king?
Yes. No, like that's really a statement that I think we're making just to kind of like jar people's like sensibilities and like grab your attention. Yeah. Because like,
well, so like the praise of American ideals is a praise of secular Enlightenment ideals. And so like when you worship America, be aware of what it is that you're worshiping.
Yeah. And it's like, again, you say, okay, so the question is, should America have a king? Like the answer is like, what depends on what you mean by that. If you think that the answer is let's overthrow the American government and install what we think is the Christian government, like, well, then you're making the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever consecration is going to happen to America has to come from above. It can't be us. It can't be our project.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. That's the problem with the modern project to begin with. It's just our project. It didn't come down from above. And like you said, like Thomas Jefferson wanted that language, and Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin took it out. He didn't want it.
Yeah.
Because it went against his enlightened idealism.
Yeah, right. His very secular enlightened idealism.
Yes, and Benjamin Franklin's philosophy is the one that won out in the end.
Right.
Like it is the philosophy of America.
Mm-hmm.
And America lives like Benjamin Franklin lived.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, America needs a king, I think, is ultimately my answer. But we're not the ones who are going to raise up the king. Just like Israel wanted a king. And if you like pay close attention to the narrative as it's framed, you'll see from the beginning God was going to raise up a king for Israel. But what happened when they raised up Saul? when they decided Saul's the king we want. It wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And instead they get David, who's the king that God chose. And like the Davidic king and the Saul type of king, like, is a very different idea. And then like the kings of northern Israel, who raised themselves up as king,
Mm-hmm.
like a very different thing. And then the Hasmoneans, like in the restored kingdom of Israel, after Alexander, like the period of time like immediately leading up to the coming of Christ, like the Hasmoneans are like the wrong, like represent, and like the Sadducees by extension like represent like are another side of like the wrong way to do things, which is we're going to build our own kingdom by our own mights and take this to such a degree that the Hasmonean kings install themselves as high priests.
Okay, so
I mean, which is like kind of what I'm saying happens in America. Like the president of America is our high priest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if not them, then the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So it's like that's how our society has become structured.
Well, I especially remember Pajot talking about like all these senators and representatives doing these like rituals of kneeling down and kissing black people's feet,
Yeah.
like playing a priestly role and like doing these religious rituals, leading the nation and those things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to kind of tie some things together and cap this off. Or either that or make you do it. So we were again like talking about America needing a king, kind of in a sort of a tongue-in-cheek way, and as we try to defend this idea behind this, then we're saying that what is necessary for good individuals and good communities and nations and all that is for submission to proper authority. I think like submission to proper authority really is part of human nature. I was talking with a student of mine, and I don't remember the exact context of this. It's related to a story that we were reading, and just made some comment about in the ancient way of looking at things, when someone in authority says to do something, then you do it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than question and challenge and like come up with your own conclusions. And the authority may be wrong, the authority may be corrupt, but they are your authority, and so you do it. And we can see this kind of like mentality that exists in the military still today, but for the most part, our society rejects this as being the wrong way of living. So this student was asking, why is it that people ever bought into that as a way of thinking? And I really didn't have time. He always asks these questions that like nobody in the room cares about except him. So I can't entertain the discussion too much. And it was kind of at the end of the class period too. But I said like the simplest answer that I can give is that, well, I don't know if I can explain why people would buy into this, but I would say that those who do, those who live by this, that when the authority says you do something and you just do it without questioning, those people emerge victorious over the people that don't view things that way.
Well,
and
yeah,
like I say, we still do that in the military. So when it comes to competition between civilizations, then we acknowledge there is no other way besides this.
Yeah.
And so like if you want to be a victor in the military plane, then you need to adopt this. We would say also like maybe there's an element of if you want to be a victor in the spiritual plane, then also like submission to hierarchy is important.
Yeah, and it's the same like in your religious life.
Well, that's kind of what I want to get to. You'll be able to continue with this thought, but in modern America, I would say there's very limited opportunity to submit to an authority because we have this belief that authority is evil and that like power will corrupt people and turn good people into evil, and the ideal would be that there would be nobody ever having authority over anybody else. Like we sort of believe that, and yet we also believe that like it's good to be a dad. It's good to be we should have teachers. We should have parents. Like we're not actually anti-authority, but we believe that we are.
Well, it's interesting because like in the Orthodox Church, you almost, like not quite, but almost have the opposite idea. Is that it's the taking on of responsibility, which is a responsibility, is like a not cynical way of describing power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
It's the taking on of responsibility is very often what you need in order to become a saint.
Yeah.
And so
there again, I mentioned Peterson, but this also sounds like this is the kind of thing that he would say all the time, that like what you need to do in your life is take on a small responsibility. You know, don't go try to be king of the world, but take responsibility over the things that are under your sphere of influence, and in particular becoming a parent, which I mentioned before. Like becoming a parent will transform you in positive ways. And why does it do that? It does that because you're stepping into a position of power. You know, I'll go ahead and use the cynical language there. You're taking on power to yourself. But you take on a type of responsibility, and that leads to positive transformation.
Yeah.
Nobody like becomes more evil and more corrupt because they have children.
Well, if you meet, like if you're not Orthodox and you have the opportunity, like yes, there are bad priests.
Well, there are bad parents too.
Yeah,
but it's like
there are
becoming a parent did not transform them into something corrupt.
There are bad priests, but I personally don't know any.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because I don't know very many priests.
Yeah.
Like I am not acknowledging that yes, they do exist, and if you had an experience with a bad priest, I'm sure it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But the priests that I know personally, and I've even had this conversation with some of them, it's like it becomes immediately obvious that this is something that transforms you as a person.
Yeah, right.
And what it is about it is like you hold people's souls in your hands, and you realize that. Like when you have people coming to you and confessing their sins, and you have people like coming to you with the issues and the problems and the struggles of their life, you have people coming to you that are broken and coming to the church, coming to Christ to find healing. It's like that transforms you. The weight of that. And I think part of that is. I think
I mentioned this before when Pope John Paul II was shot when I was young, and people were like amazed at him forgiving the person who shot him. Yeah. And I kind of thought like, well, yeah, but it'd be easy if you were the Pope. Because like this is what you have to do.
Yeah, like you know what to do.
And I thought like that's actually a big statement like in favor of the priesthood, in favor of these functional roles, is that like this is something that clarifies like you have to be this way.
Which is part of the reason why the Christian model of reality, like this is pre-Christian, it exists in the book of Exodus as well, but like God's model of the world is we are all priests. It's because if you're a priest, you know how to live. Yeah. You know how to act. Yeah. And if you're within a properly ordered world, and like that's the complaint. You know, we were talking in our video, why am I Orthodox and not Catholic? This doesn't really address that question. Maybe this actually addresses a future discussion we're going to have. But it's like that's a big problem for me when I'm a Protestant, is I don't know what to do. And ultimately it comes down to here's Frank's opinion, here's Joey's opinion, here's Bob's opinion, and I got to choose which one I like. Yeah. And the two that I don't choose are going to criticize me for not choosing theirs. Yeah. And like might not even want to be my friend anymore. And it's like this is a problem. Right. But it's like if you're
and again like on the battlefield you don't
Yeah, you don't.
You need to know what to do.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is like we're on a battlefield.
Yeah, right.
And you need to know what to do.
Yeah,
And so you need a hierarchy. You need an authority that like just shut up, stop questioning orders, listen and obey. That's what Christ tells you to do.
mm-hmm.
Um, like that is offensive to modern sensibilities. It's like, okay, but you're not going to stand.
Yeah,
Like you're going to be sitting here running these things through your mind while your enemy is killing you, and you're going to fall.
yeah, right.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you're going to be alone in the battle. Like,
Yeah.
if you are taking orders from somebody, you are not alone. You're part of the whole team. That's like the whole congregation that is
Right.
that is in the care of that priest.
Mm-hmm.
You're like fighting on the same front.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary for people to submit. I mean, when I say necessary, I just mean like I think it's part of human nature to submit to authority.
Well, I want to make a point on what we just said though before we go too much further. Is that like this all sounds like we're talking about this in the spiritual and religious realm, but one of the biggest mistakes America ever made was thinking that the religious and the political realm are different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, they're not. They're the same thing. They're just different manifestations of the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like, they're different ways. They're actually both different ways in which the unseen spiritual conflict of reality manifests in our seen physical world. But it's like it's all the same problems, all of the same questions, all the same dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually gets at my point ultimately is that America needs a king, and that king is Christ, and who actually needs to be in charge of the world is the church. Then that doesn't mean the church are like we have a theocracy where the bishops are like prince bishops. Like that's a wrong system. There still is a separation of powers, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But still, like the fact remains, the church always needs to be in the superior position, and that's like the fallout of the Reformation is that we ended up putting the church in a subservient position to the state.
Yeah.
Because the state
it's in the modern world, everything is
subservient
to the
because
state.
The state has to rise up in the Reformation and mediate the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because the church has broken down.
Yeah.
It's like that's not the way it should work.
Right.
And it should be the opposite. The church should be the one mediating the conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The church should be the one leading the way and holding the state in line.
Yeah.
But it got backwards.
Right.
And then that just leads to this American sense, well, the state just needs to stay out of religion.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Well, yes, actually. But that doesn't mean what you think it means. So, yeah. I think you know where I'm going with that. We need a state religion, but not mandated by the government. Instead, the government just, like, we need a government that bows to the authority of the church.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to wrap up
Probably
pretty soon here.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll try to pick up or respond to those particular threads. I think one difficulty that we have in America that I want to mention before we close is that we are so anti-authoritarian when it comes to government, and also when it comes to church, and the there's basically no proper place for submission to another person in political life or religious life or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, for most people that would listen to a statement like that, they would just say, well, good, you shouldn't be submitting to another person for anything.
Mm-hmm. But again, like, good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
Like, what?
Well, and again, it's like I think
watch your world burn.
I think there are a lot of times where Protestants or people who think like Protestants will claim something as being true when they themselves don't actually believe it, and this anti-authority mentality would be part of that.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, nobody looks at fathers and mothers and says there should not be fathers and mothers. This is inequality. This is one person exercising authority over another. This is one person exerting his power over another, and therefore it's evil. Everybody believes that the hierarchy that exists within a family is necessary, and everybody also believes that it is not just necessary, but that it is a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so like actually everybody celebrates authority and hierarchy. Everybody celebrates like, and I want to use the word power here again, but like, you know, I want to frame it kind of cautiously. But everybody celebrates like a proper relationship with power.
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody is actually opposed to this. Everybody wants it, but like most places where we could be celebrating it, where we could like take our place within the divine hierarchy, we're just going to say, no, I'm not going to submit to anybody else. Nobody else is ever going to tell me what to do, and nobody else is ever going to offer me a valuable insight because I can come up with it all on my own.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that won't lead anywhere. You won't be able to accomplish anything. But I think it's difficult that in our anti-authoritarian way of looking at the world, there's no religious authority for most people that you could even go and confess to.
Yeah.
Like even that is a violation of the American ideal. Definitely not a violation of the Christian ideal. But we don't do it in our American churches because it's un-American.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, I mean, for like an Orthodox person or a Catholic person, then the solution is easy because you do have, like, you can find your place in the chain.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody who's not a part of that tradition, then I think you just have to embrace like extreme individualism, and that's your only option.
I mean, it's like you can also be a bad soldier too. Like you can be, you know, like a very lax Catholic or Orthodox Christian who's just like I'm just gonna follow orders and that's it.
Right.
And like, you know, like Jesus directly addresses that. It's like, don't just do what is required of you. Like that's an unprofitable service, and you'll get nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like it's not simply a matter of just follow orders and that's it.
No. Right. Yeah.
So like we're not saying let's just be mindless drones.
Yeah.
We're just saying like we've gone in America to the absolute extreme in the opposite direction, which is don't follow anybody's orders. Nobody should have authority over anybody else.
Yeah.
We're all equal in the sight. Like, no. Well, I was going to say,
okay, so there again,
I was like, no, actually, we're not.
there again, to say don't follow anybody else's orders is a belief that actually nobody can have. Because, you know, I said it's a tendency, and I just accuse it of Protestants, but we'll just say it's a tendency of modern people to claim that they believe things that they don't really believe. And like this idea, don't follow anybody's orders, is an order.
Yeah.
Like you can't tell people that, or you're just contradicting yourself.
Yeah.
So obviously you believe that people should be following orders.
Well, Protestants like really cling to the verse where Jesus says, "Call no man father." But like leave out that like he also says, "Call no man teacher."
Yeah.
And so, but there's actually like a very important, like kind of philosophical point there, which is that teachers are okay, fathers are not. It's like, well, why is that the case?
Yeah.
It seems like if I have to choose between a teacher and a father, I would rather have a father.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I guess that's all I have to say on that.
It's it's I mean that's a sort of a different topic because in a, like that's a sort of difficulty with contradiction. Um, the call no man teacher is much easier to point out that like this is a contradiction or this is a paradox in scripture
Yeah.
because scripture frequently calls people teacher and talks to people who would see themselves as being teachers, and so like scripture does not support the idea that there should be no teachers,
Right.
and yet you have that call no man teacher, so you have this again like this paradox, and if you try to make like a precise rule out of it, then it won't work.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't work with call man no man father either.
Yeah,
because
right.
That's also like that interpretation is also like immediately contradicted.
Yeah.
And repeatedly contradicted.
Right.
But anyway, we don't want to get into that whole. I just wanted to point out like that this is just an illustration. Like a teacher is like I can decide whether or not I like what the teacher is saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But a father is much more uncomfortable for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so like really what's going on there is, I don't know, I'm just going to be blunt. It's like it's this satanic pride, which is like I don't want nobody else should be able to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I don't want to call you father.
Yeah.
Because if you're my father, then I'm supposed to honor you.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to listen to what you say. I'm supposed to do what you tell me to do. But if you're just my teacher, then who cares what you say?
Right. Yeah, I think obedience actually is a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I mean,
that,
it's obvious if you read the Gospels that obedience is like one of the highest virtues.
yeah, right.
I mean, it's like the centurion. It's like the great faith of the centurion is obedience.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like I recognize because I understand my soldiers are obedient. They don't question what I have to say. They don't think about it. They don't have to figure it out. They understand that I'm an authority and that my authority comes from the emperor.
Yeah.
And so they just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that if you say something, because you are the highest authority, that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to understand it. And like this is a problem. Like it is like this very demonic temptation that we've lost the ability to answer, which is, yeah, but you need to understand it. You need to figure it out. You need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And like I used to wrestle with this a lot myself. It's like I couldn't stand not understanding why somebody wanted me to do things a certain way. And then like I realized eventually, like, well, that's just stupid pride.
Mm-hmm.
Is all it is. Like, why do I need to know? Like, why can't I trust that this guy I'm working for has done this for 20 years longer than I have, and he knows what he's doing? Like, why do I have to think that here I am, a stupid 20-year-old, and I'm gonna figure out how to do it better?
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's like that's stupid, but that's what we all do.
Yeah.
And it's like that is the problem. Like here again, we're talking about democracy, but that is kind of the problem in democracy. It's like everybody thinks that their opinion matters. And it's like, I mean, a real simple
all these tech things that are like if you have some kind of like forum or something where anybody can make a comment,
mm-hmm.
Then it sort of obscures who is actually an authority and
Yeah.
who's a troll and who's like somebody who's kind of interested in the topic but knows nothing about it.
Yeah.
And so like it becomes a challenge for any kind of social media platform to figure out how do you prioritize comments so that it's not a pure democracy where everybody is on an equal playing field.
Yeah.
So that like the jerks' voices are not as prominent as the people who are giving a legitimate response to the question that's been asked.
Yeah. Well, so like a question I ask myself is, we have elevated all of these supposed rights in our modern way of looking at things. Like I have the right, like let's say free speech. I have the right to free speech, or I have the right to self-determination, or I have the right to this or to that, or this whole long laundry list of rights. But at the practical level, am I better off in my everyday, day-to-day life than just an average person was 700 years ago? Like, I'm not talking about in terms of quality of life. Like, obviously, technology has advanced considerably in terms of that. But just like in terms of the goodness of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know quite how to say what I'm trying to say.
I mean, like, I think of in terms of like, do I live in a community of love?
Yeah. Well, it's like Russia, Putin is evil to the West because people don't have the right, according to our way of looking things, to stand up and criticize the government whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, who cares? Like, why are you so worried about your right to criticize the government? Because look at the people who are really hyper fixated on that, who are really wrapped up in politics, and like they're deeply unhappy people.
Yeah.
And like this is actually what our democratic systems produce, is neurotic people. And if you exist in a hierarchy, then you can just understand that, like, yeah, these guys don't always do things the right way, but I'm over here living my life.
Yeah.
Like, I know things go bad, and people are going to point out like all the instances in the Middle Ages or the early modern period where the nobles like extorted the people under them, and the people had no power to fight back. It's like, but is it actually any different for you today?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it is. And I think that's something Americans are becoming increasingly aware of, is like, we actually don't have any power over the elites that are in control.
Yeah.
Like, they can do whatever they want, and we can't stop them.
Yeah.
So it's like, what actual, like, you can identify the problems that have existed in history, but your solutions aren't any better.
Okay. I was trying to tie things together, and I just don't know how to put a nice lid on this thing. I mentioned obedience is a virtue, clearly. Submission to authority,
Mm-hmm.
submission to those in positions of authority is a biblical virtue, and it's like laid out very clearly.
Yeah.
We've rejected this, and we live. I said you don't live in a community of love. You live in this fragmented society, and you're an isolated individual within this, and that's what you're going to have if your foundation is liberty and the pursuit of happiness, but also if your foundation is anti-authoritarian, then sorry, that's all you get.
Yeah.
You can be rich.
I think my way
but you can't be connected.
I just think my way of tying things together goes back to what I was saying earlier, of like, stop trying to build the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Stop trying to build the city of Jerusalem. Stop trying to build the temple. Like, understand what the prophets told us and Christ fulfilled, that our temple, our Jerusalem, comes down from above. We have the heavenly temple. We have the heavenly Jerusalem. We're not the ones that build it. God endows it upon us, or endows us with it.
Yeah.
Just remember what John saw, the kingdom of heaven coming down from heaven. And like, so what that means is, like, for us, like I always say, the American system is broken and needs overthrown, but we're not the ones that should overthrow it. Instead, we need to live the subversive lives of true Christians. And
which is like oddly like being submissive to authority. Is the,
right.
The way to be subversive.
Yeah, so it's like, I've heard lots of different people make the point that Christians overthrew Rome by dying.
Mm-hmm.
like by submitting themselves even to death.
Yeah.
And it's like that's how we win. Like that's always the story. Um, and like it seems backwards, and even a lot of Christians are going to be like, oh yeah, but we need to stand up for ourselves. It's like, yes, we need to stand up for ourselves by dying.
Yeah. Okay, well, somebody's mowing the yard now, so
Yeah.
so we better wrap it up.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening. See you next time.